no, Putin was never really serious about that. I think he was just trying to put a face to that and pretend that we are negotiating. It's the Ukrainians who don't want peace and so on and so forth. But while they were saying that they're negotiating, that they have been proceeding into the Ukrainian territory, they have continued to terrorize the Ukrainian cities. As you remembered, soon after the first cycle of negotiations, they have launched the hugest attack onto Kiev. So they've never been serious about that. So it's a sort of a game that both sides continue to play.
Yes, President Trump says Vladimir Putin told him there would be a response to Ukraine's attacks on Russia's bomber bases. How does that threat affect people in Ukraine? What's the response to that phone call and Trump's remarks about it? Let's speak to the Ukrainian MP Inna Suvsun, who joins us now. How do you feel about what you've learned from that call last night?
Well, my feelings were exactly the same as you did mention, because we knew that Putin will be talking about retaliation. The biggest question is, what did Trump say to him when he heard that? Did he mention that it was Putin who was terrorizing the whole nation for 11 years of 3.5 years of a full-scale invasion? It's Putin who is regularly targeting civilians with missiles and drones. So I wonder if President Trump did mention any of that, if he reacted to this statement, or did he just hear retaliation and then he proceeded to talking about Iran? That's the big question that we don't have an answer to.
I suspect you do know the answer, though, in your heart, don't you? That when Putin talks about retaliation, Trump probably didn't say anything at all.
That is a more likely scenario, let's put it this way, yes.
And what follows from that? I mean, is it just more pointing out what we already kind of know, that Trump had some interest in peace, but he regards both sides as equal involvers in this conflict, and he's maybe losing a bit of interest? Where do you judge Trump is on the conflict?
Yeah, unfortunately, he does see two sides as morally equal, as both sides who are just fighting for some reason, and he just wants to make it stop just because it will make him look good. That appears to be his stance on the situation. We should add some other concerns that he has to this mix. He does have an interest on Iran, and I wonder if Putin will be trying to play that interest by claiming that he can be a solution to Iran problem. They do clearly have very close relations with Iran, so he can play that card, if you use Trumpian terminology here. I think that President Trump wants the problem to be over, but not because he cares too much about people being killed, but just because he doesn't want to continue dealing with that any longer. And that is a concern, of course, to us, and that is why we have to continue working with other politicians in the US who can put some pressure onto the White House to keep US engagement.
That's interesting. Do you think there are US politicians? Because the argument that's been put to us is that although Trump is an extreme version of this, the US generally is not necessarily a sympathetic place to Ukraine. Do you feel there are senior US politicians who would still want to bang the drum for you?
Well, the rap politicians, are they senior or not? That's the question. We're seeing that push from the Senate. They do have a bill which is there, which is pending, which is about introducing very severe sanctions, which we very much support. So there are people pushing for that. There are people in the Republican Party as well who understand that Russia is a danger to the whole world and to their world as well. So there are some politicians. The question is, will they be able to prevail? That's a big issue here.
You mentioned Iran, and obviously that was a part of the call between Trump and Putin. Are you worried that Ukraine might become a pawn in a game about Iran, where Trump is willing to concede something, in his mind at least, about Ukraine in order to get Russia's support over Iran?
I'll be very frank with you here. I think that risk was always there, unfortunately. Okay. That risk was something we always kept in mind. And unfortunately, it seems to prevail at this point. But, nothing is over until it's over. So we have to continue talking to them as well.
Should we read anything to the fact that Ukraine didn't warn the US about those special operations on Russian soil, that very successful attack on Russian bombers with drones? Is that a new reality, that's not the information about that is not something you can share with the US, and you might be able to share it with other allies?
Well, to my knowledge, we didn't share it with other allies as well.
Okay.
But I do think that it's very obvious why we didn't. I think that the key to the success of the operation was that as little people as possible know about it altogether, and definitely sharing it with the current U.S. administration would be just wrong.
Because why do you think it would be just wrong?
Because there is no guarantee they wouldn't share this with the Russian side. That's very obvious, I think. Unfortunately.
Yeah, speaking about the Russians, Sergei Lavrov has said peace talks will not be hosted in the Vatican. I don't know how serious the idea of the Pope intervening between the two sides ever was. Do you think Russia is serious about peace talks in any plausible format, in any format that would actually bring about a peace?
First about the Pope. The Pope, the previous Pope, was actually helping on some issues, particularly that related to the prisoners of war, and that is a very sensitive issue here. We unfortunately have thousands of people in captivity, some of them for over 3 years, and the Russians refused to give them back. But the Vatican was actually instrumental in some of the exchanges which took place before. So maybe that can be continued, at least that part of the negotiations, which is not very public, but it's very important to the Ukrainians. But as for the talks in general, no, Putin was never really serious about that. I think he was just trying to put a face to that and pretend that we are negotiating. It's the Ukrainians who don't want peace and so on and so forth. But while they were saying that they're negotiating, that they have been proceeding into the Ukrainian territory, they have continued to terrorize the Ukrainian cities. As you remember, soon after the first cycle of negotiations, they have launched the hugest attack onto Kiev. So they've never been serious about that. So it's a sort of a game that both sides continue to play, but I think both sides understand that without very strong position from the US, but also from the other allies, there will really be no end to this just through the negotiations, particularly direct negotiations, particularly if the US doesn't take a very strong stance by saying that if you don't make a deal, then this and that will happen.
Yeah. There's no threat coming from the United States towards Putin at the moment. I think people really sense that. Inna, good to speak to you as ever. Thank you so much.